Thanksgiving was supposed to feel warm in my parents' house. The kind of warmth that comes from laughter in the kitchen, the smell of roasted turkey, and children running around showing off whatever surprise gifts their grandparents had prepared. That's how it always looked from the outside: perfect, traditional, like something out of a family magazine. But that year, something felt off the moment I stepped inside. The dining room was already full. My parents had gone all out decorating the table with golden leaves, candles, and polished plates that looked untouched, almost ceremonial. My siblings were there with their spouses, and most importantly, all the grandchildren were gathered in one corner, excited, restless, already whispering about gifts. And then I saw them. Neatly placed in front of each child was a wrapped present. Bright paper, perfect bows, some were big boxes, some small but clearly expensive. A few already had tags peeking out with names written in my mother's careful handwriting. My niece squealed when she picked up hers. My nephew shook his box like it was full of treasure. Even the youngest cousin had something soft and glowing inside a branded bag. But then my eyes moved to my child. There was nothing, no box, no ribbon, no tag, not even an empty space pretending to be forgotten. Just the cold wooden table staring back. At first, I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe they were still bringing it. Maybe it was sitting in another room. My child sat quietly at the table, looking from side to side, trying not to show confusion. But I could see it. That small shift in expression that children try to hide when they start realizing they're being left out. I leaned slightly toward my mother, keeping my voice low. "Did you forget my child's gift?" She didn't even look surprised. She smiled the same polite smile she always wore in front of guests, the kind that never reached her eyes. "Oh," she said casually, adjusting the napkin beside her plate. "We didn't think it was necessary this time." The words landed heavier than I expected. Not necessary. I looked around the table, waiting for anyone, to react. My father was carving turkey like he hadn't heard. My siblings suddenly became very interested in pouring drinks. My husband stared at his plate, avoiding everything, including me. My child quietly placed their hands under the table. That silence was louder than anything else in the room. I forced a small laugh, trying to keep the moment from breaking completely. "You gave every other grandchild something." My mother finally met my eyes, still calm, still composed. "Don't make this uncomfortable. It's just gifts, but I saw my child blink fast, trying not to cry. That image stayed with me longer than anything said at the table. The dinner continued as if nothing had happened. Plates were passed, conversations resumed. Someone even played soft holiday music in the background like we were still part of the same story, but I wasn't inside it anymore. I felt like I was watching a scene I no longer belonged in. My child didn't ask for anything after that. They simply ate quietly, finishing their food faster than usual, as if disappearing from attention could somehow erase the moment. When dinner ended, the other children ran off to open their gifts in a corner filled with laughter and tearing paper. Excitement filled the room like fireworks. My child stayed seated. No one called them over, not even once. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, watching everything unfold. The celebration, the noise, the joy that had been carefully distributed to everyone except us. And in that moment, something inside me didn't scream or break. It became quiet, too quiet, like a decision had already been made. That night, long after Thanksgiving dinner ended, I couldn't sleep. My child had already fallen asleep beside me, exhausted in the way only emotionally heavy days can make a child tired. But I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from that table, the wrapped gifts, the laughter, the silence when my mother said, "Not necessary." It didn't feel like a single incident anymore. It felt like a pattern I had refused to name. The more I thought about it, the more memories started coming back. Small at first, then sharper, like pieces of glass forming a picture I didn't want to see. Birthdays. I remembered one where every grandchild received a big themed gift bag. Video games, dolls, branded sneakers. My child had received a second-hand puzzle set, missing 3 pieces. My mother had called "It's still good enough" family vacations. There was a beach trip where all the cousins were given matching swimsuits and prepaid activity bands. My child had been told, "We didn't know your size." Even though no one had bothered to ask, I had bought my child something from a small shop near by just so they wouldn't feel left out. School celebrations. Whenever gifts were involved, there was always a miscalculation, a late delivery, or a limited set. Somehow my child was always the exception. At the time, I told myself it wasn't intentional. I told myself families are messy, that grandparents sometimes make uneven decisions without realizing the impact. But now I saw the truth forming too clearly to ignore. This wasn't randomness. This was selection. The next morning, I called my sister. I tried to keep my voice steady, casual even. Did you notice anything weird about last night? There was a pause before she answered, too long. Then she sighed lightly, like I was overthinking again. You mean the gifts? It's just how Mom and Dad are. They don't think deeply about these things. I tightened my grip on the phone. They gave every child something except mine. Another pause. This one felt different. Then she said, don't make it a big issue. It'll create drama in the family. That sentence hurt more than the exclusion itself, because it confirmed something I had been avoiding. Everyone saw it. But no one wanted to stop it. When I called my brother, he gave me the same response, a softer voice, a more careful dismissal. Maybe they forgot? You know how they are, but no one forgets every single time, not birthdays, not holidays, not years of the same pattern. That afternoon, I sat alone in the kitchen, watching my child draw quietly. At the table, they were pretending nothing was wrong. Children do that when they learn early how to survive disappointment. I felt something tightening inside me, not anger yet, but something colder. Clarity. I opened my photo gallery and started scrolling without thinking. Years of family pictures filled the screen, smiling faces, coordinated outfits, posed group shots, and there it was. In almost every single photo, my child was slightly apart. Not always obvious at first glance, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Standing a step behind, sitting at the edge, leaning away from the center of attention. Even in memories that were supposed to be happy, my child was positioned like an afterthought. That evening, I didn't argue with anyone. I didn't send angry messages or make calls I would regret later. Instead, I started writing everything down: dates, events, comments, moments that seemed small individually but formed something undeniable when placed together. And with every line I wrote, something shifted inside me, not heartbreak anymore, not confusion, something quieter, more deliberate. Because I was beginning to understand something I had avoided for years. This wasn't going to change by asking, and it certainly wouldn't change by staying silent. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I sent out invitations, not casual texts, not family group messages, proper printed invitations placed in sealed envelopes with handwritten names on each one. I made sure every detail looked intentional, thoughtful, almost ceremonial. The message was simple: a family dinner. A special thank you gathering. I want to appreciate everyone properly. My mother called within minutes of receiving hers. Oh, she said, her voice lifting with satisfaction. So you're finally doing something nice for everyone. I didn't correct her. I just said yes. I want to thank you all for everything. That was enough. The restaurant I booked was one of my parents' favorites, quiet, elegant, the kind of place where conversations naturally softened and people sat straighter without realizing it. I chose a private room so there would be no distractions, no escape, just the truth contained in one space. When they arrived, they looked pleased. My father walked in first, scanning the room approvingly. My mother followed, already smiling like she was expecting praise. My siblings came behind them, curious but relaxed. No one sensed anything unusual. At the center of the table were small envelopes placed neatly in front of each seat. My mother noticed them immediately. Oh, gifts already, she said, laughing lightly as she sat down. You really didn't have to. I smiled politely. Please open them after everyone sits. There was excitement in the air for a moment, the same kind of excitement that had filled their house on Thanksgiving when the children tore open their presents. But this time, the room felt quieter. One by one, they sat down. Chairs scraped softly. Menus were untouched, and then, almost eagerly, they reached for the envelopes. My mother opened hers first. Inside was not money, not jewelry, not anything festive. It was a printed timeline, photographs attached, dates listed, short descriptions beneath each one. Birthday celebration child not given gift while others received individual presents. Family trip child excluded from matching gifts distributed to cousins. Holiday gathering child placed without assigned present for third consecutive year. Her smile faded slowly. Across from her, my father opened his envelope next. His expression shifted almost immediately from curiosity to confusion, then something harder to define. Silence began spreading across the table like a slow spill. My sister looked over someone's shoulder. My brother froze mid-page. I didn't interrupt. I didn't explain. I simply watched. When they were done reading, no one spoke for several seconds. Finally, my mother let out a small, uneasy laugh. What is this supposed to be? Some kind of joke? I leaned forward slightly, folding my hands on the table. No, I said calmly, it's a record. My father frowned. A record of what? I met his eyes. A record of what my child experienced in this family. That sentence hung in the air longer than anything else that night. My sister tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. My brother shifted uncomfortably in his seat. For the first time, no one had a prepared excuse. I continued, my voice steady. At Thanksgiving, every grandchild received a gift except mine. You said it wasn't necessary. My mother opened her mouth, but I raised my hand gently, not to silence her, but to finish. So I wanted to show you something you've all been avoiding. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a pattern. The room was completely still now. Even the air felt heavier. I looked around the table one last time, and now you've seen it the way I have. No one touched their glasses. No one reached for food. The dinner that was supposed to be a celebration had turned into something else entirely, something sharper, unavoidable. For the first time in years, there were no explanations. Ready, only truth sitting quietly between us, impossible to ignore. The silence in that private room didn't end quickly. It stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, like no one was sure who was supposed to speak first after the truth had already been said. My mother kept looking at the papers in front of her, as if staring long enough could make them change into something softer, something easier to dismiss, but they didn't. They were facts, dates, moments, repeated patterns no one could argue away without sounding dishonest even to themselves. My father finally pushed his envelope aside. His voice came out slower than usual. You're making this sound worse than it is. I didn't react. I had expected that sentence. My sister spoke next, quietly. We didn't think it was that deep. It was just small things. That word again, small, as if repeated exclusion becomes smaller just because it happens quietly. I nodded slightly, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement that I had heard them. That's the point, I said. It was never one big incident. It was a lifetime of small ones. No one responded. The waiter briefly stepped in to ask if everything was all right, sensed the tension, and left immediately without waiting for an answer. Even he could feel that this was not a normal dinner. My mother finally leaned back in her chair, her voice sharpening slightly as her control slipped. So what do you want from us? An apology after all this. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said something that surprised even me in its calmness. No. I don't want an apology that comes after being confronted with proof. That made her pause. I continued, my voice steady but no longer soft. I wanted you to see what my child saw for years. Sitting at tables where everyone else was included. Watching everyone else be remembered. Learning slowly that they were optional. My father exhaled sharply, rubbing his forehead. We never meant to make your child feel. Feel what? I interrupted gently, left out, less important, like an afterthought. He stopped speaking, because none of those words could be denied anymore. The truth wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. That was what made it impossible to escape. My brother finally spoke, quieter than before. Maybe we didn't notice it happening. I nodded again, but this time there was something final in it. That's the problem. I said, no one noticed. No one corrected it. And no one asked if it was hurting someone who couldn't protect themselves. That sentence landed differently. Even my mother didn't respond immediately. For the first time, she looked unsettled, not angry, not defensive, but briefly unsure. The room felt like it had changed shape. The version of the family they believed in, the one where everything was balanced and fair, no longer fit inside it. I slowly pushed my chair back. I didn't bring you here to punish you, I said, standing now. I brought you here so you could finally see what I stopped ignoring. I picked up my bag, and now I don't need to keep proving it. My mother's voice softened slightly, almost uncertain. Where are you going? I paused. Then I looked at all of them. My parents, my siblings, the people who had shared holidays and photos and memories, but somehow missed the child sitting quietly at the edge of them. I'm going to make sure my child never has to wonder where they stand again. I turned and walked out. No one stopped me, not because they didn't want to, but because, for the first time, they had nothing Left to say that didn't sound too late. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter exactly, but clearer, and for the first time in years I realized something simple and irreversible. Family is not defined by shared tables. It is defined by who gets remembered when the gifts are given.